There is a word that diplomats almost never use in official settings. A word that carries too much weight, too much accusation, too much clarity for the careful, hedged language of international relations. A word that strips away the euphemisms and the bureaucratic language and says exactly what something is. That word is bribe. And on May 5, 2026, a senior United Nations official used it. Not in a private conversation, not in a leaked cable, in public, describing what Iran is doing to the global shipping industry in the Strait of Hormuz, describing the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, Iran's newly launched bureaucratic mechanism for controlling passage through the world's most critical energy choke point, as a system of bribes, as state-sponsored extortion dressed in the language of regulation. And then something even more remarkable happened. Nothing changed. Ships kept paying. The toll booth kept collecting. The world kept accepting it. This is the story of how a country under devastating military attack, a country whose infrastructure has been bombed by thousands of American and Israeli strikes, a country whose supreme leader was killed in February and replaced by someone even more hardline, figured out how to turn 21 miles of water into the most profitable real estate on the planet. And how the world, despite knowing exactly what is happening, has found itself with no good answer for stopping it. Let us begin with the economics, because the money here is staggering and it is hiding in plain sight. Before February 28, 2026, the Strait of Hormuz was free. Not free as in cheap, free as in open. 3,000 vessels per month, 120 ships per day, $0 in transit fees. This was not generosity on anyone's part. It was international law. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, ratified by the vast majority of the world's nations, establishes that ships of all countries enjoy the right of transit passage through international straits. No country can charge for that passage. No country can require permits for that passage. The strait belongs, in the legal sense, to everyone. Iran signed that convention. It never ratified it. And in 2026, with a war providing the cover and the IRGC providing the enforcement mechanism, Tehran decided that the legal framework it never formally accepted was simply no longer relevant. The numbers that have emerged from the PGSA's first days of operation are extraordinary. According to shipping intelligence reporting from Lloyd's List, the most authoritative source in global maritime trade, vessels have been paying up to $2 million per transit to obtain approval from the Persian Gulf Strait Authority. $2 million per voyage, in Chinese yuan, wired to accounts controlled by or connected to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the same organization that the United States government designated as a foreign terrorist organization in 2019. The same organization that has been firing missiles at American warships. The same organization that attacked the UAE's Fujairah oil terminal on May 4th, injuring 3 Indian nationals and setting the facility ablaze. Now let us do some basic math. Before this war, approximately 3,000 vessels transited the Strait of Hormuz every month. Even at current depressed traffic levels, with ships stranded, rerouted, and terrified, a meaningful number of vessels are still moving through the Iranian-designated corridor. If even 100 vessels per month pay the PGSA toll at an average of $1 million per transit, a conservative estimate given reported payments of up to $2 million, Iran is collecting $100 million per month from a strait it has no legal right to toll. $100 million per month, in a war, flowing directly to the IRGC, from the very shipping companies whose nations are sanctioning Iran, whose navies are patrolling nearby, whose governments are calling the PGSA extortion. That money does not appear in any sanctions database. It does not trigger any American financial enforcement mechanism. It flows through Chinese yuan-denominated transactions that are deliberately structured to avoid the dollar-based financial monitoring that underpins Western sanctions architecture. The de-dollarization of the world's most critical maritime choke point is not an abstract geopolitical concept. It is happening right now, in real time, one transit permit at a time. To understand how Iran got here, how a country at war managed to convert a universally recognized international waterway into a functioning toll operation, you have to understand the sequence of events that led from February 28th to May 5th. When the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury on February 28th, Iran made a decision that its military planners had been preparing for years. Rather than attempting to match American and Israeli air power directly, a battle it could not win, Iran turned to the one asymmetric weapon that no amount of American military superiority could easily neutralize: geography. The Islamic Republic sits along the entire northern shore of the Persian Gulf and controls both sides of the Strait of Hormuz at its narrowest point. Iran's IRGC Navy, equipped with fast attack craft, mines, anti-ship missiles, and drones, could make transit through the strait dangerous enough to deter commercial shipping without Iran having to win a single conventional military engagement. The strategy worked almost immediately. Within days of the war starting, tanker traffic dropped by 70% as shipping companies suspended operations. Insurance underwriters began quoting war risk premiums that made transiting economically catastrophic for most voyages. Ships already inside the Persian Gulf found themselves stranded, unable to exit through a strait where Iranian forces were boarding, attacking, and seizing vessels. Ships outside the Gulf refused to enter. The world's most important energy corridor went dark. By late March, the IRGC had moved beyond simple interdiction to something more sophisticated. It published a map showing what it called alternative routes for transit through the Strait of Hormuz, routes that channeled traffic through Iranian territorial waters, past Larak Island, within range of IRGC inspection teams. This was not presented as a toll. It was presented as a safety measure, a courtesy, an accommodation for neutral vessels that simply wanted to get their cargo through. The fact that ships using this route were expected to have prearranged documentation and that those arrangements increasingly involved payments was described by Iranian officials as a natural consequence of wartime costs. Iranian parliament member Aledin Boroujerdi stated it plainly in late March. He said that because war has costs, naturally Iran must take transit fees from ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Not apologetically, not quietly, publicly, as a statement of Iranian policy that he appeared proud to announce. The strait has costs. The toll is the price. Pay or do not transit. What followed the PGSA's formal launch on May 5th revealed something important about the real-world gap between international legal principles and the actual behavior of global shipping companies under economic pressure. Maritime experts are unanimous that what Iran is doing is illegal. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is explicit. No country can convert an international strait into a toll corridor. The United States Treasury Department issued guidance in April warning that payments to Iran or the IRGC connected to Hormuz transit would not be authorized for American entities. The U.S. State Department has called the PGSA illegitimate. European governments have condemned it. The International Maritime Organization has noted its deep concern. And yet the ships are paying. Not American ships. American companies are legally prohibited from doing so and practically deterred because their government controls their access to the financial system. But Asian companies, European companies routed through third-party intermediaries, companies from countries that have not joined the American sanctions regime and that face a straightforward commercial calculation. Their ships are stranded. Their cargo is rotting or running late on contracts that carry penalty clauses. Their crews are trapped for months at sea. And on the other side of the equation is a $2 million payment that gets their vessel moving. The emergence of a parallel scam industry before the PGSA launched reveals just how desperate this calculation had become for shipping companies. After Iran informally announced its toll system in March, fraudulent operators immediately appeared. People with no connection to the Iranian government offering fake transit paperwork in exchange for cryptocurrency payments. Ships were paying scammers for documents that were worthless. The PGSA solved this problem in the most cynical possible way. It replaced chaos with bureaucracy. It gave shipping companies a verified official email address, pgsa@iranports.ir, to contact for legitimate extortion rather than illegitimate extortion. Arsenio Longo of maritime intelligence firm HUAX described what the PGSA is really doing as geopolitical vetting. Iran is not only saying, "Pay us," it is trying to create a traffic regime, a permanent administrative structure for Iranian sovereign control over a waterway that international law says is not Iran's to control. The shipping intelligence data makes clear that this effort is succeeding in behavioral terms, even if it is failing in legal ones. The official International Maritime Organization corridor through the strait, the lane that international law designates as the standard passage, has been almost entirely abandoned. Most vessels that have transited in recent days have used the Iranian-designated route through its territorial waters. They are voting with their hulls. They are choosing the Iranian corridor not because they accept Iran's legal claims, but because the Iranian corridor is the one where you are least likely to get a missile through your engine room if you have your paperwork in order. Now here is the geopolitical dimension that makes this story so explosive and so consequential beyond the immediate crisis. What Iran has demonstrated in the Strait of Hormuz is a model, not just a tactic for this specific war, a model for how a determined regional power can use geography, asymmetric military capability, and bureaucratic creativity to extract economic rent from global trade flows that its adversaries depend on. A model that every revisionist power in the world is watching and studying. China controls the South China Sea. It has built artificial islands, established administrative zones, and repeatedly challenged freedom of navigation operations by the United States Navy. Beijing has never been able to convert the South China Sea into a toll corridor, but watching Iran successfully monetize the Strait of Hormuz provides a template that Chinese strategic planners are undoubtedly analyzing in detail. The Malacca Strait, through which approximately 40% of all global trade passes, including the vast majority of Chinese imports and exports, runs between Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. It is not controlled by any revisionist power today. But the lesson from Hormuz is that geography plus military presence plus bureaucratic formalization plus economic desperation among users can convert an international strait into a de facto sovereign toll road. Russia is watching with its own interests in mind. Moscow has been arguing for years that the rules-based international order is a Western construct designed to serve Western interests while constraining others. The PGSA gives Russia a concrete example to point to. Here is a country that violated the rules-based order in the most dramatic possible way. Here is what happened. The West condemned it. The United Nations noted concern, and the ships kept paying. The rules-based order, Russia can now argue with a specific supporting case, is enforced selectively and can be defeated by a sufficiently determined actor willing to absorb the costs of defiance. The Trump administration's Project Freedom was supposed to be the answer, the demonstration that the United States would not accept Iranian control of the strait and would restore freedom of navigation by force if necessary. Trump's language was characteristically emphatic. Ships attacked during the escort mission would result in Iran being blown off the face of the earth. The American military fired on Iranian small boats. It destroyed 6 of them. 2 ships made it through the strait. 2 ships in 48 hours. And then Project Freedom was paused. The pause was described as strategic, a temporary halt to assess the potential for a complete and final agreement with Iran. Iran described the pause as confirmation that its strategy was working, that Project Freedom had demonstrated the limits of American willingness to use force to reopen the strait, that the cost of actually forcing the issue, the risk of escalating back into full-scale war at a moment when Trump is about to fly to Beijing for a summit that may produce a trade deal worth trillions of dollars, was higher than the American political system was willing to pay. And the PGSA is still operating. The email is still being answered. The forms are still being processed. The tolls are still being collected. The UN ambassador who called this a bribe was right. It is a bribe. It is a protection racket operated at civilizational scale. It is the most consequential act of maritime extortion in modern history. And the fact that it is working, the fact that the world's most powerful navy launched a 48-hour escort operation and then paused it while Iran's bureaucratic toll authority continues to process transit applications, tells us something important about the limits of hard power in a world where economic interdependence creates leverage that missiles cannot easily neutralize. 22,500 mariners are still trapped in the Persian Gulf. Over 1,600 vessels are still stranded. The Strait of Hormuz is still operating under Iranian traffic management, and the Persian Gulf Strait Authority is still at work. The world called it a bribe. Iran called it a transit fee. The ships are paying it either way. And until something changes, until a peace deal is reached, until the American military is willing to absorb the escalation risk of truly forcing the issue, until the global shipping industry finds an alternative that makes the Iranian toll economically unviable, the most important 21 miles of water on the planet will continue to be managed by a U.S.-designated terrorist organization charging $2 million a vessel for the privilege of passing through waters that international law says are free. The rules said it could not happen. It happened anyway.